Hi, everybody. Welcome back. It's good to be with you guys.
It is.
So today's going to be a little bit different, but also the same. What's different is our friend Shane is here. Hi, Shane. Shane, do you want to tell us like what you do, who you are?
Sure.
Okay.
So I'm Shane Fanning, and I am the, what is my title?
Pastor of Connections.
Pastor of Connections and Groups at Christ Community. So I help people onboard the church, help them find kind of a sweet spot with volunteering, things of that nature, and just feel more connected to the church. So
Cool.
That's my role.
That's awesome. Well, none of that matters because that's not why you're here. So I'll set the stage for why you are here. So my role at Christ Community is I'm the next gen pastor, and something we recently did is we sent out this parent survey to all the parents of our church, and it's been really fun looking at the results of a whole bunch of different questions that we asked. But one of the questions that we asked parents is like, out of this long list of things, and we listed a whole bunch of things, what do you as a parent worry about most for your child? And the number one answer, like it was really, really clear, the number one answer was parents are worried about the influence of peers on their kids' lives. The reason why Shane is here and KJ and Jenny are still here.
We made it. We made the cut.
Yeah. We thought it would be cool to do one of these episodes kind of focused on this topic. But we also thought it'd be really valuable to get the perspective of parents who have seen their kids through the journey, like all the way towards the end of high school. So, Shane, here's why you are here. 2 reasons. 1, you're really insightful. 3 reasons. 2, you're a really good parent. 3, you have seen your kids all the way through that journey. Like, you know what it is to get the full picture of things.
Yeah.
My oldest kid is 8.
You're a baby.
Yeah, right. The influence of peers on my kid's life is they say butt now instead of bum. And so I'm really concerned. And Jenny and KJ, like you guys have like nearly seen at least one of your kids' journeys almost all the way to the end of high school. So your guys' perspective is really, really valuable compared to mine, even though I have this title of like the next gen pastor. The influence of peers on my kid's life. You guys have lived it. I've just like read about it and heard about it. So instead of like bringing experts in here who've read a bunch of books and gone to classes, we thought, what if we just ask parents who have lived this and just have a conversation about it? So here we go. The influence of peers. What has that experience been like for you guys on your parenting journey?
You know,
So who's gonna go
something
first?
is brewing.
Absolutely, but
Yeah.
who's going to?
You go.
You want? Okay, so I think that's a big topic, of course, because people like said, here's the biggest thing. It causes a bunch of fear, and I think the peers that our children have create incredible parenting opportunities. That's the place that it comes from. Is our kids coming home at whatever age that they are, so earlier in their like development, they're going to come home hurt or confused or unseen, and so you have the opportunity to kind of bring comfort and talk about identity and here's who you are and like here's how to converse, and then they get older and then they come home saying I don't feel included, or there's that whole inclusion exclusion thing, because then they grow into a phase that they're excluding people that they don't want to be around, and so you have that phase, and then of course the older that they get, they begin to hone in on who the peers are that they want to be around.
Yep.
I would hope, and so I think like every opportunity that comes home. So there's the idea of like problems are opportunities. And as a proactive parent, the goal would be to see these opportunities to hone and shape the child into seeing themselves clearly and seeing the other people clearly too. That's just this bit bigger umbrella picture, I guess.
Seeing it
that
as more of an
I
opportunity.
is see it. And I think too, I always tried to have the vocabulary of I am not surprised by this. It's a common
That's really
thing.
good. Yeah.
That is
It does not. I don't go, how could this happen? It's like, of course this happened. You're a teenager, or I've thought about this. I'm glad you brought it to me.
Yeah, that's really good. Because I think a perspective of, I don't know, just like a gut reaction of parents can oftentimes be, my kid's peers are out to ruin my child.
Yes.
And
Yes.
they are a threat, and my kid is so vulnerable that they are defenseless against this. But like the reframing that you're talking about almost like paints your kid in this position of integrity and strength of like, okay, you can withstand this. Let me help you navigate this.
Right.
Instead of like, oh no, what has happened? They are forever ruined.
Right.
I think there's an element of control in that as well that us as parents feel we need to have when we don't. You know, you don't have to control every environment that they experience, but allowing it to happen, allowing them to maybe have a bad influence and see how they navigate it rather than they're so vulnerable, and not underestimating our own kids, that they can be resilient enough to be like, this maybe isn't a good idea.
I've also, and so on that, you don't have to control everything, but you can control some things.
Yes.
And by being a parent who's just, I think I try to be observant. I try, and so there are those times that I will just be like, you absolutely cannot be around this
Yes.
person. And because I don't do that at all, those times that I do, it's kind of like, okay,
Yes.
cool, I won't even question it. I think there's something in that from a parenting perspective.
Before I say
What's
anything
your-
else.
I think sometimes observing my boys, I think they've navigated it at times better than I navigated it myself. And I think part of why they did is they have had a higher level of confidence than what I had when I was, growing up in those ages. Now that doesn't, I had a lot of great friends, so I don't have any terrible story of somebody that led me astray or anything like that. But when I think about some of the ways I acted through those years, I actually look at my boys and I'm inspired by the fact that I feel like they've handled those teenage years in some ways better than I did. And I think it was because I had such a lack of confidence. And so I think one of the things that we can instill in our kids or try to nurture is less trying to control who they're going to be with, but who they are, and like just building up the love that we pour on them so that when they go out there, they tend to make better choices, I think. They're not as insecure. They're not as likely to be, hateful or tease other kids because usually when you're doing that, it comes out of your own insecurity.
Right.
And so anyway, and that way I think I've been inspired, by my boys. And, you said as far as like trying to, we can attempt to try to control, but the reality is we can't. Like they're going to develop friendships, on their own. There's just so many times when we're not there. And that's part of life.
Or date somebody that you
Or
don't
date
want,
somebody,
yeah.
Which is, maybe we'll get to that later, maybe we won't. But that's been probably the hardest thing for me as a parent was seeing a relationship that one of my sons went through and the damage that caused. And quite frankly, I don't know if I could handle it any different.
Okay.
But I learned a lot through that process from my other boys. I think the other thing is I'm hearing you guys talk. It's interesting that I have 5 boys, so I have no girls. I had a sister. She's passed away, but I had a sister. So I kind of have a little idea of what it's like having a female in the house, but I haven't raised a female in the world that the peer influences that are now and the social media. So even though my boys experience social media, I don't think they probably experience it the same way that young women experience it. And so that's just a fascination to me of how a parent navigates that part of parenting. But those are some of the thoughts that are popping in.
I think you guys are hitting on maybe like the core of the worry, and that's a lack of control. Like you can't
Sure.
control the peers. I read this book recently where it had this picture of a diagram, and there's this large circle that was labeled
Pepperoni pizza.
Yep. And it was delicious.
And we're back to food.
You and pizza. It was called the Circle of Concern.
Okay.
And then there was a much smaller circle within it that was labeled the Circle of Influence. And then there was this tiny little dot in the middle of that was labeled the Circle of Control.
Oh, wow.
Just kind of highlighting, it's like we're concerned about a lot, we have an influence over a little, and we have control of very, very
That's-
little.
That's amazing.
KJ, you were talking about like choosing what to exercise control over. When it comes to the influence of peers, from your experiences, what is worth controlling? And have you guys tried to control something and it just like utterly backfired in your face?
That's a good question. Wow. I actually don't think I've actually pulled out that card yet. I bring up the card and say I could, but I will not because I want you to experience it. And so it's a classroom opportunity for me, I think.
Yep.
It's like,
Yep.
but I have not pulled out that card yet. I am very I'm proud of the children I have. They haven't like gone overboard. Like
Yeah, they're great kids.
they've definitely like poked at some things.
Sure.
And I think the parenting fun opportunities is as soon as you see them poking, that you're able to say, hey, I just want to explore this a bit. I see you're poking at this. I could see if you continue to poke at this, here's what's going to happen.
Yep.
And just so they can hear it first.
Yep.
And so it's a choice they have to continue.
Yeah.
But I don't think I've pulled out that card and controlled it because it's probably impossible. I don't know, like the thing you're saying. But yeah, how about you?
No, we've used that card.
Oh, nice.
So
How?
with social media,
Okay.
it's a no. It is a solid no until they're adults. Like you can choose to consume that and utilize it however you want when you're an adult, but there's just been, for us, too many, especially with girls, too many studies on mental health and things
Yep.
like that just destroy the comparison, all the stuff that comes with it. I'm an adult and I know it's not good for me,
Yeah.
So
Yeah, for sure.
so that's probably the only thing at this point, that's been like, you can't have that. And it's funny because I had my oldest at her physical the other day, and she's 16, and her doctor, this was a new doctor that we saw, and she, goes through, is asking her all these questions, do you smoke? Do you drink? All these things. And then she said, okay, so I want to talk to you about mental health, and I also want to talk to you about social media consumption.
Nice.
And she
That's a
had
part
that
of the
in the
package now.
physical.
Yeah,
I
that's
was
so
like,
good.
whoa.
So good.
Yeah.
And so, my daughter sat there and listened to everything, and she just listened. And she said, I'm not on any social media. And and the doctor even looked at me like, really? Like, whoa, it's just
Yeah.
like, yeah, not until she's, 18. And even then, she even is like, I don't know if I'll go on it. I see
Yep.
how dramatic some of my friends get,
Yeah.
So again, but that's future.
Yeah, I think Australia just banned social media for anyone under the age of 16.
I think they did too. Yeah.
We'll see how effective it is to enforce that. But
Well, yeah, exactly. Right.
Well, when you talked about the circles and
Yep.
going down to that little pinpoint or whatever, when you think of the world that your kids have access to,
Yep.
I kind of think that little pinpoint is your home. Like,
Yeah.
That's kind of where
Yeah.
I'm like,
Oh, yeah.
okay, so if there's one place where I think Amy and I and my wife and I have tried to offer some real control is in that home environment.
That's good.
Because, that is that one. Once they go out, though, as far as I've never now, my wife is a teacher in the school where the boys have all gone. So that has given her a different.
Little help.
Well, and it also has given her insight, sometimes more fear. Because as a dad who's not there in the schools with them, basically I try to love them as well as I can. I try to put the parameters on the best I could while they were going through school. But once they walked out my door and they walked in the door of the school, it was on them. There was no control of I didn't try to navigate, what teacher do they have?
Right.
What kids are going to be assigned in this class? Should they be in this class? Oh, no, can you keep them away from that kid and put them in this class or whatever? Or, I only want them on this team or whatever. It was like, no, I'll try to set this safe, this teaching, this loving environment in the home, and then I'm going to release them. And I suppose that doesn't mean you don't try to have some influence on those types of things, but then when I think of that pinpoint on that diagram, that's what I kind of think of as that home environment. And then after that,
That's so true.
Yeah.
Is there a difference between control and like shaping, like a proactive shaping? I think
Yeah.
about that. There's been times that one of the kids, they would come home from school, they'd talk about their day, and there's like a friend who they've had forever that it's like apparent that this is not a good thing. And so like the proactive shaping is like being able to talk about,
Yep.
like the influence of that. Like, so how do you handle this? And like asking like very curious questions,
Yeah.
kind of help them think through it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think that's the circle of influence. Like I love the verbiage there. Like control is like you change things. Influences is like your words and your actions. They have the potential of shifting the trajectory of something. As your kids get older, the voices of their peers gets louder. Like right now, my oldest kid is 8. His friends' voices, like they are very, very faint in their lives in their home. Like our son was like, my friend, I'll call him Billy. Billy said he went to space. And I can just say, well, Billy's a liar. Like
Done.
and I've totally I have controlled my son's belief in Billy's ability to experience outer
He's at
space.
school. You're a liar.
I'm like programmed to think the best of people. The first thing I thought was his family possibly had been a part of SpaceX.
No.
Like that was my first thing is like, man, don't call him a liar.
No.
It could be.
No, not Billy's
Billy's
family.
dad is a teacher.
But still,
Billy has not been to space.
possibly his parents built him a space environment at home.
Yeah.
And invited him into that.
That's
So in
not
Billy's
space.
mind,
Yeah, there are other things Billy supposedly has done that he's not done. He's never discovered a dinosaur fossil. He's never driven a tractor on his own. Like, I just know.
We've established.
There's a lot of things that Billy says that
if you
are
knew
not
the whole
true.
picture, KJ,
Billy's
you
a
wouldn't be
liar.
questioning it.
okay, well, I'm just
He's a
like,
liar.
well, he's probably gone to Colorado Springs and seen dinosaur bones, and
No, he has
his
not.
dad has a tractor, and
No. I guess those other two are a little bit plausible, but I can guarantee he's never been to space. Anyway, your kids, they get into middle school, they get into high school, and they start really listening to what other people are saying, and that's normal. How do you guys maintain open communication with your kids to have the types of conversations that you guys are describing. Like, I think it's crazy inspiring that like you're able to like sit down and it's like, okay, like let's talk about this thing that you're poking, without, because I think it's so easy to like power up, throw down control cards, put down boundaries, and like do two things. You burn your relationship with your kid because you're overbearing and controlling, and you are showing them that you are not a safe place to have honest conversations about these things that they're encountering. How have you guys tried to keep an open line of communication?
I think part of it, like, you have to just give them the freedom to fail. Because once they realize they've got a little bit of that freedom, then they'll come to you more. Like that's been my experience, is it feels like if you try to control it too much, that like almost pushes them away. But if they know that you have some trust in them, and there's just a time when they get to those ages where you just got to start letting go a little bit more. But it's also interesting to have 5 boys, how they're all different. And it'd be interesting to only have one child, and then you would kind of like base all your experiences off of that, of like, this must be how it works. Like 1 + 1 = 2, and this, but when you have 5 that come from 3 different biological environments, because I have 3 adopted and 2 biological, but for some, some of my boys will tell me everything, and others won't tell me anything. They're raised in the same home.
Yep.
And so did one feel safe and one didn't feel safe? I don't even think it's as much that, but like there's just different personalities. Some are more talkers, some are not talkers. But I think a huge thing that has helped is giving them the freedom to fail.
I remember like the shift in my oldest of, and I wish I would know exactly what age it was, but it was rather than her coming home and saying, Mom and Dad, what do you guys think about this? Like, we're talking about this in school. And then there was a shift that she quit saying, what do you think? And she started saying, what I think. Like, I think that, and I remember like my husband and I talking about that, like there's less curiosity in what we say and more she wants us to just hear her opinion and her perspective, you know?
Yeah.
And being able to do that without being like, nope, you're wrong, but being able to say, well, why do you think that? You know, what is it? The keep asking why, kind of thing. So, but I remember that shift, whereas, my youngest has never said, what do you think? She always tells us what she thinks. So that'll be a completely different personality.
Yep.
Yeah, that's good. It's always kind of scary talking about these things at the age that our kids are, because until they're like 40, you actually don't know. You know what I mean? Like,
that's true.
You know what I mean? Like, so I'm just like, just kind of like, and so I was just thinking about that. Like, I think I'm inspired by Shane's answer, and saying that as a parent, giving ourselves the ability to fail, but to own it, especially as they go into their teenage years. Of there's been, tons of times that I have to apologize to them, and so
Same.
man, I dropped the ball here. I failed. Can you forgive me? Those moments build trust, build equity as far as those conversations going forward, because you're not pulling out that parent card of I can do and say anything. I'm the parent. It's I am bound by the same laws as you are, and I'm so sorry. I dropped the ball. I also have found in things that they go through, man, it has been so valuable to be able to point back to the places I was going through those things and I failed, and be like, here's what I did. Here's the things I've been taught over the years. I want you to be able to stand on my shoulders compared to feel like you have to do the same thing I did. And so by being authentic, by being vulnerable, by being humble and saying because I think that for every kid, there's that point in time that they find out that their parent, that they're not Superman.
It's called the veil's lifted.
Yeah. And I fully remember that experience that I had as a kid.
Yeah.
I was trying to be preemptive kind of in that and saying, I'm not this. I'm not this.
Yeah.
So I want you to grow. I'm going to be ahead of you. And so kind of the thing that I think is fun as I have a son who's about to graduate. I'm trying to continue to be ahead of him, so I can continue to be a father. It'll be a different capacity of parenting.
Yep.
But there's that trust that's been built. There's the idea that he doesn't have to start over again or go find himself, because I'm hoping, like again, I don't have a clue until he's like
Right.
40. But I'm hoping he feels very confident. He's had those conversations. So
Yeah, I love that humbleness piece. I think that goes so far, and it's. I think maybe our generation has been
It's a generational thing.
more
yeah.
comfortable going there.
I think so too.
Because I don't really remember my parents ever going there. Love my parents.
Yeah.
Know they love me,
Yeah.
but don't ever remember them going there.
No.
And I think it means so much to them. I remember even asking the boys at one point a few years ago, like we were all sitting at the table, and I thought we were going to have maybe this real like powerful moment. And one of the things that I've really tried to do, like KJ said, is I've tried to apologize to them when I'm aware that I've messed up, which of course as parents we all know.
Like
we mess up all the
4
time.
times this morning.
Yeah. So, I've really tried to do that, but I wanted to even go deeper into it. And so, I just asked him, I was like, you know what, boys, I know I have harmed you in ways as I've parented you. I've apologized when I've been aware of it, but there's times when I've hurt you and I don't even know that I've hurt you. Do you want to talk about that?
Wow.
Or please let me know, if I've done that. And what I thought would come out of that is surely they'd be like, oh, thank you for that permission. This is a way.
Let me get my list.
Yeah. And the reality, there wasn't. They're like, Dad, like, you've been a great dad. You haven't. Yeah, I know that I have.
Right.
But what I hope came out of that, even though there wasn't some great moment of like, oh, well, Dad, here it was. And, we met in this. But I think just the humbleness of just like, I've recognized this. And, maybe you don't even see how I've like potentially hurt you in ways now, but maybe all of a sudden you will when you're 35,
Right.
whatever. But I hope it's that planting that seed, that there's a level of trust and love, of knowing how I love them and how that makes it easier for them to have that good dialogue through the years. Or whatever.
I just had a thought. And I hope this isn't going in a direction.
Take the train.
But all right, so for all the people who are playing this podcast, it's about parenting, right?
Yeah.
And you think about the friends that you have at the age that you are.
Yep.
Do our friends and family that are our age talk about going to counseling for the peers that they had growing up and the influence that their peers had on them?
That's such a great question. Yeah.
You never hear that.
man.
Yeah.
Okay.
You're right.
The thing you always hear.
I don't want to talk about it.
Seriously. The
Well,
thing
this
you
is a
always
podcast. That's why we're here.
you always hear about someone in their 40s who needs to process their upbringing, needs to
Yeah.
process their mom or their dad.
Yeah.
And their parenting, their household, their upbringing. And so because I'm glad this podcast is happening. This is like fun to talk about because I think the ability to hold a mirror up to ourselves that the things inside of me are being transposed to, I'm building a household out of who I am. And so,
Yep.
do you know what I mean? Sometimes our biggest fears are pointed at something that actually isn't true.
Yeah.
Sure.
That's so crazy. And I was thinking about, not on that exact train of thought, but when you were saying giving your kids that permission, having that they see that you have that awareness, because one of the hardest things is when you are in therapy later on in your life and it's like, am I willing to go have this hard conversation with my parents?
Yeah.
Because I maybe need it now. But there are a lot of people that are like, nope, I can't.
Yeah.
You know, like that's huge to give to them. You might regret it here in a few years. And you're like, dang, here we go.
Well, and I'll probably have to remind them of that invitation too,
Yeah.
because that was like a few years ago, and it might be there in the deep recesses or
Right,
whatever,
yeah.
but it's that ongoing journey of, and like I've been able to even share with them, again, this is maybe getting us off the subject or whatever, but like, my mom has passed away, so I can't have those conversations with her today, but with my dad, I can. But like I've told them, like my dad was very much an imperfect father. Love him, he loves me, he's imperfect, and there's been wounds along the way or whatever. But I also have told them, like, I've been able to release, like,
Yeah.
that, because I know in his imperfection that he's loved me through it. And even the things he doesn't know that he's done that have hurt me, I've forgiven him for it. I hold no, anger on that or whatever. And again, in sharing my journey with my own dad, I'm hoping that I'm planting those seeds with them too, of what that looks like moving forward. So I don't want to get us too far off the peer
No, that's great.
influence,
Sure.
but
Yeah.
One thing, because this is real time, I got a text on what we're talking about. No, but one of our editors here, but he said there are people that go to counseling and stuff for like bullying trauma and
Absolutely.
things like
Sure.
that,
Sure.
So,
Yeah.
and that's a real
point.
thing. If your kid is going through that, which, oh my gosh, that is a whole nother level of parenting,
Yeah. Yeah. The question you asked is like, who do people go to see counseling for? And what you just said, super valid.
Yeah.
Like that's absolutely the case. But it really highlights just this reality that like studies have shown over and over and over and over. Parents are the number one biggest influence in a kid's life, like throughout their entire life. Like even during the teenage years when they are maybe doing everything that they can to convince you otherwise, you are still like the absolute like biggest influence in a kid's life, and the way that we like respond to things like that's going to carry
huge responsibility.
far.
Yeah.
Well, something else that's been interesting for me to observe is that the temptation sometimes as a parent and, amongst my parenting peers of trying to orchestrate friendships.
Yeah.
And and it's interesting when they're really little. It's pretty easy to
Super
orchestrate
easy.
friendships.
Super easy.
And it all just works. They
Yeah.
seem to have chemistry,
Yeah.
and you can put them in a park, or you can put
Yeah.
them down in a family room, throw some toys in
Yeah.
there, and it's like, they're going to be best of friends for their entire life.
Right. Do you like rocks? I like rocks.
Have you
be
gone
best
to
friends.
space?
Yeah.
I've
I
gone
have.
to space.
You're my best friend. My best friend's gone to space.
But then as that journey goes into like those teenage years, it's interesting to see some of those like really special friendships when they were younger that they become their own people.
Yeah.
And every once in a while it sticks.
Yeah.
And those become like maybe their lifelong best friends. But oftentimes it doesn't.
Right.
And they truly find the person that they have the chemistry with or whatever. And so again, I guess I would encourage parents to release that burden of trying to orchestrate
Yeah.
that. At least that's been my experience again of like, it's just, and for the most part, most kids are not going to cause that much damage, in this process or whatever. But,
Yep.
but yeah.
Yeah.
I think 100%. And I can't overstate the importance of praying In those times that you feel like there isn't control or there isn't, I don't know, the thing to do. Oftentimes, if you sit down and pray, by the end, you will have a pretty good idea of the heart of God for your child and the heart of God for you. Because there are those, I mean, like 99.9% of the time, a child's peer isn't going to have that big of an influence. But that 0.00% that it does, there's countless stories of people that have gone in the wrong crowd or, you know, blah, blah, blah. And then the parents don't know who their kid is anymore. And it's like, how do I get them back? And so I think, like, there is this proactivity in prayer. There's this proactivity in parenting that if you are a step ahead of your kids, that there's something really beautiful about that. But I also think being a step ahead in Jesus takes the pressure off of being a perfect parent because the gospel abounds in a household that's dedicated to Christ. Like the gospel of imperfection, the gospel of grace, the gospel of humility, the gospel of sacrifice, servitude, like all of the fruits of the Spirit, those are the things that I think causes a child after they graduate, I hope, to have the desire to come home. To have a desire to continue to see you as a father, as a mother. It's those attributes that have created this identity of safety and home.
Yeah, that's really good. That kind of ties into something I wanted to ask you guys. How have, like, the whole concept of, like, once they're out the door, like, I have no control over the situation. I am not physically there with my kid. Anything could be happening. How have you guys, if you have, like, tried to remind or instill in your kids the practice of just encouraging them to invite God into spaces where they have a choice, like you're coaching them in making wise decisions for themselves. How do you encourage them in the same way, like you're going to God in the place of a parent, inviting them to do a similar thing in just like being a more and more independent human being? Have you found an effective way of encouraging that to happen, where you're no longer like mediating their relationship with God, but you're facilitating the relationship with God and like trying to like show them it's like he's always there for you. Like if you're scared, if you don't know what to do, I don't know, like it could be any situation. What does that look like?
I think probably the thing that comes to mind most is what KJ just said, of that all the thousands of prayers we've prayed with them.
Yep.
Because from the time the boys were teeny tiny till late teenagers, we prayed every night together. And I think that speaks volumes to them of mom, you know, their mom, my wife, and I's dependence on something above us that needs to guide us through this and protecting them. And I mean, I feel like that's the most powerful way I can think of how we've tried
really
to
good.
nurture that.
So you're saying it's like just by them witnessing the example of you doing that for yourself, they see the benefits of that.
And, you know, I don't know how much this is. We wanted to try to empower them and their prayer life also in a small way. So something we've done forever around the dinner table until like very recently is we would go around and each night at dinner a different person prayed, just so they weren't just witnessing their
Dad
mom
praying
and I.
over the food.
Our dependence on God, but that they had that opportunity to be practicing it themselves. So
Yeah.
I don't know. That's at least one way. Maybe.
Yeah.
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 I've found there's been like a shift in our conversations.
Yep.
That in the past, they would come to me and or my oldest would come to me and say something happened. Well, here it is, and I'm like the expert. I'm going to, give him some advice, and then I'll say, "How would you go pray about it?" That there's been a shift that if he comes to me and said, "Hey, something happened," and I've begun to say, "Have you asked Jesus about it?" It's hard. I think it's hard because I want to be in that spot.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Ugh. Weird. And so I'll say, why don't you spend a day, pray about it, journal about it, then bring it back. I will do the same thing. And then the two of us can talk about it. So it's kind of giving him that, like, it's more important to talk to Jesus about it, hear the thing that he's saying. And as a parent, it's been crazy about, like, he'll come back and go, okay, I talked to Jesus about it, here's the thing he said, and it's like, yeah, that seems about it. And he's like, I think I'm good.
Who knew?
Yeah, and it's just like, okay, so as a parent, it's very comforting to be like,
Yep.
he can hear from Jesus, Jesus talks to him, he's gonna be okay.
Yeah. And like that and something earlier, it kind of exposed something within myself. Like I had a bit of an epiphany of like all of the things that we're talking about kids as they get older and grow more independent, like they stop asking us questions about what's the right thing to do. They stop maybe like processing a lot of things. I think what I'm getting at is this. Like, I think we often talk about kids as they grow older, they grow out of the need to, like within, the more independent they get, the less of a need that they have to ask for advice or talk to someone. But I'm seeing it's like, I'm going to Jesus for everything that I would go to a parent to in middle school or younger. So like what you're talking about is like, you want to hold that place,
Yep.
but you are inviting your kids to allow Jesus to hold that place to an extent of like, I have not grown out of the need for a parent.
Yes.
Jesus is my parent now.
Kind of. So as you were talking about that, I had this thought of, as our kids are younger, that role that you play, that our kids call us daddy or mommy or that cute kind of thing, to I'll ask you this from an adult perspective. Have you grown out of the desire to have a mother and a father? No. It's almost the older you get, the more you want to fight for it. The more conversations that my dad and I have had that I'm like, Dad, you need to be my father right now.
Yeah.
So I'm having that at the age of 44.
Yeah.
So I think I have a desire to figure out how to have age-appropriate parenting.
Yep.
And I think that the older the kids get, the more of a father I become and the less of a daddy I am.
Yeah.
So my daughter doesn't have to have me carry her.
Yeah.
That's hard.
Yeah.
However, I'm excited to have her carry me. Going, I don't know.
Yeah.
There's this whole thing,
Yeah.
but I think there's this perception of I'm done after they turn 18. But the desire of our heart as we grow older as a child, I am someone's child. I do have a desire for a mom. I do have a desire for a father. So do our kids, and so are our kids are going to have that same thing. And so you have to continually ask yourself, how am I a father? How am I? Yeah.
That's really good.
Okay, I'm like going through a counseling
love
session
it.
right now.
I love it.
Ugh.
Did you have any thoughts, Jenny?
Yeah, because it's interesting. You know, your kids are closer together, so
So I have a son who's going to be 18 here pretty soon,
Right.
and then a daughter who's turning 16 in June.
Yeah.
So yeah.
But I also understand your son's getting ready to graduate.
Yeah, and I'm feeling
there's
all the feels.
emotion.
So I'm sorry. I'm feeling it.
I will be there in a year. We will do this podcast again
I'm
in
the
a
best.
year, and I will be a puddle.
Shane already has graduated, like so many. It's like,
He's like, you guys are going to be fine.
I'll talk to you in a decade.
Yeah, exactly. But because my kids are farther apart, it's interesting to just kind of watch how they're experiencing their faith. Whereas, you know, I feel like my oldest is in this place now of like loving to go into scripture and even, you know, having, you know, Bible study dates with her boyfriend, you know, like they find, you know, it's cool to like see that she's hungry for it in that kind of place. And then just in her relationship with Jesus. Whereas it's interesting watching my 10-year-old who's experiencing Bible studies sometimes for the first, or not Bible studies, Bible stories for the first time and being fascinated, you know, heaven and earth were what, you know, and how did this happen? And she's just, you know, reading these things to her and her experiencing them almost as knowledge, and that's how she's consuming it. And so we have to kind of turn it into, well, what does this mean for you relationally, you know? And she's 10, you know, she'll get there, you know, but so I think there's just an evolution that I'm recognizing now that happens when they're experiencing their faith. And it's going to look very different for both of them too. So, and that's fine. But I think too, what you said, what your initial question or something is like, how do you instill that in every day? I think honestly, for me, it's been the opposite of, I allow them to see my doubt. I allow them to see my questions.
Sure.
I allow them to see I feel distant from God right now, and that's normal, and that's okay.
Yep.
You know, so that it's not like, you know, God is good all the time. No, you just keep remembering, you know, that kind of thing. But just being able to see the realness in faith and that it's okay if I'm feeling this way at this time, you know, and to be able to talk about it. So,
yeah, it seems like there's like this really big common theme of open authenticity seems to be underneath everything that we've talked about, whether it's control or influence or instilling a connection with Jesus. I heard someone say a while ago an incredible description of parenting, or just a statement about parents. She said, parents are doing the hardest thing they've ever done, and they have no idea if they're doing a good job. And I think that's kind of the heart behind this conversation of us not showing up being the experts and having all the answers, but us just coming together saying, here's what I'm trying, and we'll find out when they're 40 if it worked or not.
and we'll go, sorry.
Yeah.
And I fully expect to have the conversation I had with my father.
Yeah.
Like, I'm
Yeah.
going to have that also.
Yeah, I've seen a lot of iterations of this conversation where it's like this picture perfect. Here's exactly how you do it, and it just kind of leaves me with a sense of like,
Yikes.
congratulations on being given the perfect child,
Yeah.
and or the person who has like tons of degrees and 0 children, and it's just like, man. So like, I just have such a heart for these conversations to happen. I want to leave you guys with like a few things. First, like, if there was anything that stood out from this conversation, hold on to that. It stood out for a reason. The other thing is you must not, if you are a parent, you must not forget you are the number one biggest influence in your kid's life. And I love how the conversation veered towards is like, I'm just going to be the example. Like, influence as a parent, it's not just, I'm going to teach you something, I'm going to tell you something, I'm going to shape you. But just by doing something, not at your kid, but adjacent to your kid, just doing that is influencing your kid. And so, I don't know, maybe that might be a sobering look in the mirror a little bit. But you are the number one influence in your kid's life. If you're listening to this and you are not a parent, or you're...
Way to hang in there the whole time, first of all.
Yeah, seriously. It's like, that's amazing. Or like, you are a parent, but it's been like, you're past 40. You've already had the 40-year conversation. If you know of someone that would really benefit from hearing this conversation, share it with them. And if that's you, this was shared with you, and you're listening to this right now, this is not what every episode looks like, but stick around, because like, we've got really good stuff.
Is there anything here for elderly parents? There's a huge portion of the people who play this podcast
Yeah.
that are over the age of 60.
Yeah. Yeah. The first thing that comes to mind is it is never, ever, ever too late to apologize.
Yep.
Whoa, that's big.
Ever. Like, if your kid is in their 50s and 60s, just as you said, our heart is always for a parent. Like,
Yes.
the door is always open to apologize. So if,
Or invite
Conversation.
the conversation of, I'm sure there's a time I hurt you. Is there? Yeah.
yeah. Or if it is an elderly parent, chances are good your kids have kids. And so listening to this together and having a conversation about it from this really vulnerable place of like, okay, we both know the outcomes of me not doing this or me doing this.
Yeah.
Let's have a conversation about your kid. Like, I don't know. It could be something
Good.
like that. So,
That's beautiful.
right.
Thanks, man. for
yeah.
having us.
Thanks for being here, Shane, regardless of your title and your position. Yeah.
We care nothing of that.
you're,
totally fine.
you're a great parent. So I'm glad you're here. All right, guys. Thanks for joining us. Hope you have a great day.